I would like to say a few words about Anicca, a key concept from the teachings of the Buddha. And it's important to note, I think, that concepts are valuable insofar as they take us to wisdom. So they are tools. It is wonderful that we have the tool of language, the capacity to develop and cultivate our thinking in terms of Dhamma, and in doing so, of course, we're using concepts. So I say this because the Dhamma transcends concepts. They are just tools. They're there for our use to take us from this shore to the other shore, from the shore of ignorance, delusion, to the shore of clarity and understanding, wisdom and peace. They're like a boat, a vehicle, a transportation. We don't, like the ladder, right? We don't carry the ladder or cherish the ladder for anything other than what it does for us, its function. So anyhow, Anicca, one of the key characteristics, as Lord Buddha describes this world, the true nature of reality, he talks about three characteristics: anicca, dukkha, anatta. So in this brief talk, I'll speak to anicca part only. And it is very difficult to define anicca. We, of course, know impermanence, change, nothing stays the same. These are commonly ways that anicca is being defined, and it is no coincidence that it is difficult to define anicca, because what we're dealing with from the very beginning is nature, the way things are, and language. So, and then of course the Dhamma that Lord Buddha teaches comes to resolve this conflict, resolve this dead end, almost deadlock, because of how limiting language can be, words and concepts to define, to truly penetrate. If it was a matter of language, intellect, analytical, we would just read few lines of Dhamma and quickly understand and become wise. So at least in the present, given how our minds, our brains are under so much negative influence, we have to do more work. It takes more than intellectual understanding. So anicca, the way I think of anicca is in terms of a verb, not a noun. So think of everything in terms of a verb versus a noun. So I think what Lord Buddha is trying to capture through this term anicca is that nothing is a thing. Nothing is static, fixed, complete, done, substantially as it is, unchangingly. So everything is a verb. So ing. You can apply this to anything. The body is a verb. Everything is moving. The blood is circulating. Digestion is always working. Thoughts are always coming and going. There is always movement. Nothing is the same. Feelings are always changing. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, everything is moving. Moving in terms of there is constant otherwiseness. There is constant change. So it is impossible to put something within the mold of a noun. Imagine standing in front of a sunset. You find yourself in nature. Your eyes are gazing at the sun. The sun is setting. There are clouds. There is color. There is beautiful collage of shades of red and purple and light blue. There's this moment, as if that if you were to take a picture of, the picture would capture that moment, but stay there for a few seconds or a few minutes, and you will quickly see how everything is changing. The colors are changing shades, and the sun is, basically, literally, you're witnessing anicca, the ing, the verbness, the fact that everything is moving, everything is changing, and within a few minutes, the sunset, the whole, that initial picture that really captured your attention, it was beautiful, and now you might even find your heart sinking because it's gone. It's a normal process, a flow of change, of things constantly arising and ceasing, arising and ceasing. Nothing personal. It is our eyes that are tainted with delusion. We don't really see reality. We see through the views that we have of reality, the thoughts, the perceptions, the wrong understanding. And that is very much tied with language. So words give us the illusion of thingness, the thing, people, states of mind, the body, feelings, everything. Of course, we are in this domain of language. There is no way to discard it, but there is relief when we think in those terms, think in terms of verb versus noun. And in nature, there are no nouns. If you observe nature, literally, flower, a bird, the trees, they're moving, they're changing, they're breathing. The breath itself, there is no breath that you can put in a box or put a label on and say, this one has this essence, and this breath has this essence. So just note the breath that just came out of you and just came in. Can you go back to that, rewind, go back to that exact same breath that you took a second ago? You can't. It's ridiculous. So perhaps the fastest way to connect with the anicca nature of all things is the breath. It's never, so long as we're alive, it's always flowing. So anicca is the verb, a process, it's a flow, it's a current, it's a happening. But when we dress up reality by words into thingness, that's when we cause our own pain. And of course, again, there's nothing wrong with nature. There's really nothing wrong with the body. There is nothing wrong with the sunset. It is our eyes, our vision that is not accurate. It's distorted. So there's nothing really to change outside. Out there, it's all about our eyes. It's all about the clarity of the windshield so that we see better. So this illusion and then delusion, of course, this false belief that there is, and it's so ingrained, it's so deep, it's so subconscious and unimaginably programmed into our thinking that we cannot even imagine how deep it goes, that default setting, as if that And that, again, is very, very intimately tied with language, the way we use language, the way we define ourselves, the way we define other people, realities, past and future, change, the body, you know, every aspect of our existence has this veil of delusion where we imagine things when there is just flow, there is just process. So I would like to offer a simile that I'm borrowing from Bhante Nyanananda. It just blew my mind when I first read this in one of his sermons. To be precise, this is in Sermon 6 of the Law of Dependent Arising series, where Bhante Nyanananda uses the simile of the magic kettle. And I'm sure in our daily lives we've come across versions of this, perhaps in the form of a fountain, you know, a flowing fountain, of course. So he talks about the magic kettle behind a windshield of a shop, where imagine a kettle that is where water is flowing from the kettle into a basin. But the magic comes in the fact that the kettle never gets emptied and the basin never gets overflowed. So there's this continuous flow of water from the kettle to the basin, from the kettle to the basin. But of course, we know that there is a secret pipe underneath which carries the water from the basin back to the kettle. So there goes the magic of the flow of the water from the kettle to the basin. And that's the world. It's just arising and ceasing. It's just this flow, this movement, this verb, which we grasp mentally by imagining things. Imagine you were to attribute a characteristic or a self, a personality to the drops of the water that are flowing. And then you were to come up with stories for each drop. It's ludicrous. So there is no identity, just a flow. There is no ownership. The water is just flowing. There is this constant natural flow. There is ease. There is no strife. There is no tension. There is no fighting. So nature is fine. Again, I want to distinguish, delineate two things here. On the one hand, we have the natural flow of things, the way things are, and on the other hand, we have language and perception and the delusion of thinghood, things being fixed, static. And there is, of course, the whole dependency element, the dependent arising. The kettle water is getting filled up because of the basin. The basin is being filled up because of the kettle. And this thing is happening because of the secret tube beneath too. So there is this dependent arising. None of these can exist on their own. They're all conditions. And you can take this simile as the world, as the I. Whatever that we wrongly perceive to be existing on its own. And again, this perception is so deep, it's so ingrained. We don't think of this consciously. That's very important to understand. This is something we have taken as fact so deeply that questioning it becomes also very difficult. And so the images, the similes, I find to be very, very powerful, especially this one. Just if you could bring this to mind in moments of pain, tension, whether physical or mental, to release or soften your grip on thingness. And of course, words don't do the job completely. It's an experience. Once you bring this to mind, it's how the mind relaxes, and the heart will know that it's all ignorance, the cause of our pain. So that's how I would approach anicca, this flow of things. And the breath, again, is the closest, the most powerful, perhaps the most intimate example of the anicca of all things. It's always flowing. You cannot go back to the previous breath. You cannot anticipate the 10th breath in line coming up. So then on another level, it just exposes also the ludicrousness of the past and future. It's all one, it's all now. There is no, it's all a mental construct. All you have is the breath right now. You can think of those past breaths, or you can think of those future breaths, but then they would only be thoughts.